Hello, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives. And it's Friday morning, a little after 11 a.m. on May 19th, 2023. And we are together for our Friday chat. So if you have anything you want to talk to McDuff about, well, let's put it out on the table and let's thrash it out together. I enjoyed very much the interviews I was able to do this week with Hervoye Morich and with, of course, with Nick last night, our good friend Bill Taylor on Monday night. And it's been a week in which I've taken in a lot of new information, and I feel good about the new information I'm getting. It's also a week of expanding upon my knowledge of my father's career and what was going on in 1962 in the upper reaches of government. And we find, a lot of people would agree with our author yesterday, Mr. Richard Cottrell, when I was reading from Gladio, the NATO's dagger at the heart of Europe, that the, the strange idea of General Lyman Lemnitzer to create terror in the United States and blame it on Cuba as a method of getting the American people to consent to a war against Cuba wasn't just a one-off. It wasn't just that he wrote this proposal this one time. That was the direction in which the entire Pentagon was going under Eisenhower. And Eisenhower didn't have any problem with things like the coup in Guatemala, the coup in Iran, the other like we didn't even talk about Indonesia, but the intentional use of Machiavellian tactics on behalf of the United States empire has come out in a way that I think we can't deny anymore. Like this book that I read a year or more ago, Operation Gladio by Paul L. Williams. There it is, the unholy alliance between the Vatican, the CIA, and the mafia. To this book, Dope Inc., Britain's Opium War Against the World. Well, while one book might wish to shade it towards one side and another book might want to shade it toward another side, the fact is there really is a conspiracy, whether you say it's the British or it's the Jesuits or the Vatican or the Chinese or the whatever, the Freemasons, whatever you put it to. I think it's not so important as is to just identify the fact that there is a conspiracy behind the scenes in which evil things are done as just a matter of doing business, doing ordinary business in the life of these soulless corporate maniacs. And the maniacs have risen to the top because that's the way the system is set up. And now we are suffering under the lack of any moral qualms in our economic system of the world, which implies that we're going to be at war forever. And at war against other countries, other people, other ways of life, I think is the main point. As in the Vietnam War, we could look at it as an opportunity to develop an opium market, or we could look at it as an opportunity to try out the Phoenix program, and we can look at it as an opportunity for young military officers to get experience. We can look at it as an opportunity to introduce heroin into the armed forces and have them bring it back to the United States and demoralize our country in that way. But another way we can look at it, which I think is even probably more to the point, more to the deep point, is that this was a thousands-year-old civilization. They didn't need anybody outside. They were doing all right. They're doing their thing. They had their village and clan and chieftains, and they had a life cycle, and they had villages in which the people, had a life. They had a real ongoing civilization that was not dependent upon the money system. And that was what I think they really sent, the Ed Lansdale and the creeps in to destroy. And so now you have a Vietnam which has been converted into another uh, capital friendly place, and the devaluation of the freedom of the people to just engage in their traditional lives that following a pattern of thousands of years. Well, that's what the big banks don't like. They don't like the idea that you can survive without having to have a loan that you have to pay off. And that, to me, I think also speaks to what's going on in all the places in the world where we still have strife in Africa and in Southeast Asia, everywhere that the financial system hasn't been able to insinuate itself yet. Well, that's going to be called communism or anti-Semitism or just plain old uh, dictators. And we will go out and expand quote unquote democracy wherever we need to. And that is destructive of thousands of years of wisdom in some cases. In many cases, the old cultures that disappeared cannot be reconstructed. It's like old languages. As long as I'm just riffing on my own thoughts, it always brings to mind the character of Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky, of course, a deep state puppet, a man who uses his brain to cover up what's really going on. And it reminds me of my studies of his earlier years, in which his his specialty is linguistics, right? He's not supposed to be a political specialist, but that's what he ends up talking about. But Chomsky is the person that they were able to use to promote the idea of language coming from this Indo-European source and spreading out. And so that perhaps the idea would have been, well, the cavemen had this primitive language, and then the Middle Ages had a much better language, and now we've got the Renaissance, and we've really got a lot of words. And geez, now, hey, gosh, look at Shakespeare, and we got the British, and we got Americans, and everybody's writing in English, and it's the greatest language that's ever been invented. But what if that's not true? There was another um, linguistics expert who was studying the Native American Indian languages in the Southwest. He died very young. I can't remember his name, but it was a competing theory. The idea that, wow, this this language these people have been speaking for thousands of years is really complex and interesting, and might even be better than ours. Heaven forbid that we were not at the spitz the. Sorry, slipping into German, at the point of the spear of civilization, and our language has to be the top best language ever was, of course. Well, no, you need a Chomsky to come in and reinforce that idea and get rid of, you know, maybe he died of natural causes in his 30s. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look for that person's name. But it's so consistent with the deep state plans of making us all think that what we see here is all that ever could be, that their construct of reality is the only reality, and that we are in the march of time, the march of progress. The classic picture from the bent over ape to the Homo erectus to the through the ages of man, and now we're reaching forward. And where are we reaching forward to now? Well, this is where Nietzsche comes in and says we want to be the Ubermensch, we want to be the Superman, the super duper Superman. So let's pull in some non-biologicals into our bodies and see if we can't, do something godlike. We could not only we could extend our own lives, but we could create these new forms of life that, yeah. So, and this enlightens us too a lot about what they've been showing us from Hollywood and television and everything about the future. They want us to think of that as an inevitable future, that there will be somebody named Data that's going to sit there and have human expressions, human emotions, human style thinking, and a very empathetic voice that's going to be actually just as human as you and I. They want us to believe that. I don't believe it. This is the alchemy, the idea that they can take a golem, a soulless living creature, and create what appears to be and acts like a real, fully human person, out of cybernetics. It's got to be funny to them when they think about, how they can make us believe this stuff. Because, no, it's all seduction into us becoming servants, us becoming slaves, us becoming expendable at their whim. That kind of one of the big themes of Frank Herbert's book Dune, which I remember some of. I didn't see the movies, by the way, but the book itself is kind of a Tolkienian scale, and it is a metaphor for what we need to look out for. The ideas then are manufactured in order to convince us that this is an inevitable future, but it's not. It's certainly not. The possibilities of life are incredibly, you know, exponentially plentiful. So let's keep on unfolding the evil of the past, but not forget the incredible promise of the future if we can just regain and sustain the goodness, the morality, the empathy, yes, but not just empathy, critical thinking, application of logic, application of experience, application of education, application of all of the tools that we're given. There's a great resurgence of what I would call iconoclasm. Iconoclasm means the destruction of idols. The image that I get from that iconoclasm is when I guess it was Al Qaeda that blew up those ancient um, monuments that were in Afghanistan. And often you would see things destroyed in Iraq and other places that are just, you can't replace them. Like the seven wonders of the world. Well, how many of them can you still go see? You can't replace these things. How can we stop the destruction of the past? Well, it's that imperial state of mind that we are everything and the past is nothing, and we are going to obliterate the memories of every human being so that they are only thinking in terms of our view of our prescribed universe, and that is a universe in which we will continue to rule and exploit as we will. Because these folks, they don't believe in a creator of this amazing world, this incredible biosphere. They don't believe that they owe anything to the creator of all of this. They don't believe that there is anything except for what they see, feels, taste, smell, touch, and most importantly, measure and count. So perhaps it is an ongoing Manichaean struggle between those of us that believe in a higher life, higher understanding, and those of us that just believe in the rule of might and money. And maybe that is the great drama of the ages that we must play out. But I don't think so. I think that there's a lot more interesting things to do than to fight. And so if we can simply retake the dream, the aspirations of people when they first started this country, they weren't coming together in Philadelphia with the idea of this is going to make me rich. No, it was the idea of establishing a new way of life for educated, critically thinking people to be happy, to prosper, to grow, to expand, to explore, to invent. And, it's been largely successful, although we mourn and need to recognize all of the defeats. So I'm hoping that we can get past this corruption that we see in our government now, the Biden corruption, the Obama corruption. You want to say Trump, okay, Trump corruption, whatever. It's all part of that stage that they've set that we're supposed to be the players in. And we don't need to be puppets acting out these scripts. We need instead to have the spiritual food, the spiritual nourishment from wherever we get it, that reminds us that, hey, we've been given an incredible gift here. Look at this biosphere. Look at these birds. Let's smell that wonderful air. Go swimming. Take a hike. Walk around the block. Breathe. Do something that enhances your connection with the real life, the life of the biosphere, the life of nature. And that way, just to be grateful, to be humble, to be thankful that I get to draw this breath, that I get to experience a feeling of peace, a feeling of comfort, a feeling that somehow, despite all the tragedies in the world, that I'm okay, that I'm doing the best I can, and that things really can be better if we all apply ourselves to it. And everything that they send us is about surrender, Dorothy, right? Dorothy. As you know, as you may know, Dorothy is a character created by the author Oz, Frank, and Baum. I'm sorry, where my mind is. L. Frank Baum, I think, was his name. But anyway, in the earlier editions, he was using metaphors, and Dorothy was his metaphor for Theodore. You to jumble the word Dorothy, and you can come up with Theodore, right? And that was his code for the United States of America because President Theodore Roosevelt was the president when he wrote that book, or that was what it was in his mind. So, surrender Dorothy, surrender US, surrender. That's the message that the British Empire wants us to accept. And yes, it is them, it is the British Empire. Do you see any other empires, encroaching upon America for the past 230 years? Nope, that's the one. Now, let me turn to the chat after I've expelled some of my thoughts this morning to the universe. Hopefully, they are well received. Okay, let's just see. Hi, Corky. Hi, Rick, Corky, Maureen. Norman Smith is here, All the Sun, and Brightmore. Let's see, Brightmore. JFK, go ahead and go through some of these comments. Oh, it's not showing. I asked for it to show and it's not showing. There it is. Okay. JFK helped set the stage for the murder of 1 million Indonesians via U.S.'s Civic Action Program, a means for building a military state within a state, and later using operatives live General Suharto. I disagree with you. I don't think that you can lay that at JFK's feet. Where's my book? Um, it's about Allen Dulles versus JFK, and the whole Indonesia thing. That was not JFK. That was Dulles acting under Eisenhower's authority, and so I have to strongly disagree with you, Brightmore. I think he did not do that. This was if you want to blame a president, you got to blame Eisenhower. No, yeah, no, you're mistaken. It's not. You can't lay that at JFK's feet. Um, I want to have that book in my hand when I'm talking about this because it's a really important book. It came out about 2 years ago, and I think it's called JFK versus Dulles. And there's two thick chapters in there about Indonesia and what went on there. Fascinating. I did do a show on it. I don't know if it's still available on YouTube. Good day to you, Road Warrior 11. I can't quite see your icon. Looks pretty funny. Corky Goss, hey man. Bad food of the 50s in cookbooks. Corporate poisons, you bet. Yes, Mrs. Rombauer, she will help you to make that pie, make that chiffon, make the the sugary confections, and of course lots and lots of meat and mass quantities. But I think the the suppression of nutrition information has gone along with the creation of these large grocery stores that came along right after World War II. The end of farmers markets. In Washington D.C., there's still a place called Eastern Market, and they do have a market there. But that used to be the place where people in Oxon Hill, where I grew up, would truck their vegetables in. It's called truck farming. And you and your kids and your neighbors would go out and spend 10, 12 hours in the field picking beans or whatever you were growing, put them in bushel baskets, load them into the truck, and drive down to DC to Eastern Market, and people would buy that fresh produce right off the truck. It's not normal for us to consider food to be dangerous. Food is food, it's life. Food is life. How could food be dangerous? But this is the secret things that were going on in the 50s and the 60s. And it's a very important point to think, that they were putting nitrites to preserve bologna in Oscar Mayer, and my mother ate Oscar Mayer salami and bologna for dinner, maybe half the time she was on a budget. And, I remember doing the same thing when I was in law school. I would eat a bologna sandwich, and that kind of manipulation of us to get us to say, oh, okay, well, it's important that we all have bologna, so it's okay that some of us are going to get cancer early, and we won't even tell them. Of course, we'll say that nitrites are safe, that you don't have to worry about it. No, the FDA has approved this, so of course you can eat it. Okay, you're gonna get me going on that subject, Corky, and the way I feel about the corporate food disaster. Wow, and we're all still hooked on it. Not me, though. Not me. No, my wife and I have been eating very, very well. That's where our money goes. We spend a lot of money on good food. That's what we have to do to get it. Corporate meat products. I wouldn't want to have that. But so many people just go ahead because it's part. That gets back to my earlier point about, well, this is America. Hamburgers. How can you be in America and not love hamburgers? Well, I loved hamburgers, but I don't trust the contents of the corporate forms. So, no, I don't stop at those places. If you want to travel, you better bring some food with you, because road food anymore, unless you get real lucky, is full of crap, and poisonous crap too. As Corky says, corporate poisons. Brightmore, Frank Wisner, and Howard Jones helped it. Yeah, so now you're back in the 50s, right, Brightmore? Okay, my alchemy is not golden. Oh, this little road warrior Chomsky showed his true colors when he promulgated the official government narrative 20 years ago. Yeah, and he's still with it. He's still with the 9/11. And people on the left think he's somebody important. He's nobody. Failed states. He writes a book and calls it Failed States. The states didn't fail, they got undermined by the CIA. Don't you get that, Norman? No, he doesn't. He'll never see that, because his paycheck depends upon him not seeing it. And another comment here from Brightmore. Iconoclasm of tearing down American statues, including Albert Pike. Wow, what an amazing thing that is. Um, eh, People from the Schiller Institute were trying to get that done legally to remove it, the LaRouche folks. And some of the articles you can read at EIR at LaRouchePub.com are very interesting about that subject. Well, tearing down the statue of Albert Pike is, it's like, why should there have ever been a statue of Albert Pike in the heart of our capital city? Well, who is he, and why does he get to be, memorialized in this holy statue? Well, it has a lot to do with Freemasonry and the power of Freemasonry behind the scenes in our government. Look at the head, the main building up on 17th Street, which I've never been inside of, but supposedly has inside of it a replica of J. Edgar Hoover's office. right down to the telephone and all the pins and I mean everything. Just J. Edgar Hoover replicated right in the heart of the Freemason um, primary um, Masonic Hall in D.C. So Albert Pike is revered for a vision that these folks were enamored with of the future. And, I am not an expert on Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction Freemasonry, but I've read a good bit about it. I'm happy to have a copy of Albert Mackey's 2 volumes, and the connection going back to the Illuminati is real. And the idea that they can create a new society, a new world order, is real. And that new world order is going to be, in their minds, democratic. Everybody's going to be free and everybody's going to be happy, and it's all going to be a wonderful convivial group of people that are going to live happily ever after. But in order to get there, they have to get rid of the mistakes, the unworthy ones, the ones that shouldn't be allowed to dilute the gene pool. And that is totally un-American, totally against the Constitution, totally against the dreams and aspirations of the founding fathers. As far as I can see, you know, people can read things differently. You might think, Benjamin Franklin, he was really a Illuminati or something like that. But I don't think that's accurate. I think that we have documents and we have the Constitution. And what really is important here is that the Constitution exists, and it is the only thing that separates the United States from the empires of the world, the dictatorships of the world. And, for us to surrender, you know, surrender, Dorothy. Da-dun, 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 da. Yeah, and the flying monkeys are coming. What are you going to do about the Stuka bombers? The flying monkeys are coming, screaming as they come down, destroying defenseless people. Because that's what flying monkeys do. Hilly Billy. What a great name. I was in Ireland. My wife and I were actually, we were married in 2006, and we did our honeymoon over in Clare, of course, in Galway. And we traveled around with the great writer, P.J. Curtis, who enlightened me to the fact that hillbilly is a reference to William of Orange, the uh, William and Mary, the King of England after 1688, and his side on the Irish War of 1687, in which he defeated James II, that his followers, the Ulster Scots, under the Hanoverian government that followed, were persecuted because they were dissenters. They were non-Anglicans. They were Presbyterians or Baptists, but they did not conform. They didn't go to the Anglican Church. And what the British did was they disempowered their priests, their ministers, from holding masses, marrying people, burying people. All the offices that you would go to your religious leaders, they were denied. And, they just got more and more discriminated against so that they started coming over to the United States in the middle of the 18th century. So, Irish immigration is many, many layers. The first layer was the Ulster Scots. They're Irish. They considered themselves Irish. They were born in Ireland. Their ancestors might have lived there for 3 or 4 generations, but they were ultimately from the lowlands of Scotland. Most of them had been involved in the wars and were given some land in Ireland as a compensation since the king didn't have any money to give them. As usual, you're going to get paid. Yeah. Here's a piece of paper, a scrip that says, I am entitled to 10 acres in Ohio. Well, how am I going to get to Ohio? Well, it doesn't say. Well, maybe I'll just sell this to George Mason for 50-50, and, that's how the rich get rich and the poor stay poor. Boy, I'm on a roll this morning, aren't I? I appreciate everybody's comments. I seem to be using up all the time on my own mind. Let's see. Sergeant Stadenko, what have you got to say? Napoleon shot the Sphinx nose off with cannons, too. I didn't know that. That's an interesting story. Hmm. Napoleon shot the Sphinx nose off with cannons. Huh. Hilly Billy, the coronation of the new king looked like a scene in the underworld. They love to fight. I didn't watch, so I don't know. I just saw some glimpses of the gilded carriage, you know, and I think of it as a gilded cage, right? That guy, he's got to stay drunk and high all the time in order to mentally survive his life. What a horrible life it must be to be Charles the Turd. Yeah, Irish English has a way of expressing things, does it not? Charles the Turd. All of a sudden says, yeah. Well, okay, I'm learning things here. As always, I always learn from everybody. And it's one of the things that really just is so silly that you see everybody, a lot of these people that are out in public speaking have this idea that they're supposed to know everything, that they're supposed to be authoritative, and so they don't want to admit that. Gee, hey, I just learned something. But you have to keep your ears open as well as your mouth, and sometimes you got to shut that smart Irish mouth, John. Okay, Sergeant, you're going to take your Ethel for a walk. I hope you have a great expedition out there in the fresh air. Garden Girl, thank you for reminding us the World Health Organization meets next week, and they are considering the adoption of a system that if we sign on to it, we can't ever get out of it unless we have our Congress actually vote to get out of it. Our Congress doesn't vote to get into it. Somehow, because we have these treaty powers in our Constitution, the president can get us involved in this without the people being behind it. I think it's a serious problem with our Constitution where we say that the treaties have the force of law. Anyway, it's a big problem. We have to, you know, rise up and say no. Don't sign this WHO treaty and while you're at it, let's just disempower the WHO. It, it's had the most worst results of any international institution in history. Look at the horrors that they've caused, the deaths, the suffering, the infertility, the loss of futures for millions, if not billions of people. The WHO has got to go. Now, that's my opinion, you know, for those YouTube people that want to say I'm giving out information. I'm not giving out information, I'm giving out my opinion. You say I'm giving out medical misinformation. I'm not a doctor. I never said I was. Yeah, that's completely dishonest to call what I'm doing misinformation and cost me my channels. It's just totally dishonest. That's why I'm at Rumble, and I'm asking everybody to please go to the trouble, take the 2 or 3 minutes to go to Rumble, sign up for Rumble, just like you did for YouTube, and then you can become a follower of McDuff Lives, all one word. We've got 275 people that have done that so far, and I really need 1,000. When I get to 1,000, I'm going to feel like I can just dump the YouTube channel. So help me get there, and I do appreciate it. Thank you in advance. Oh, I love that. Empathy, yes, but cut the cards. Oh, you remind me of my grandfather. My grandfather was a great card player. He loved to play cards. Uh, it was cribbage that he and I played. We played cribbage, from time when I first learned how to play cards. When he would come by the house, on his trips, he was a snowbird from Connecticut down to Miami. And so he would stop at our house in Maryland and spend a few days. And a lot of that time was spent with me and him and a cribbage board. Um, I, I'm pretty sure he was a bit of a card shark. He won an incredible percentage of our games. And, cards, that was a big part of his life and a lot of people's lives back in the first half of the 20th century. What else did you do? You didn't have a television, right? You got together with some friends, played some cards. Well, that's an interesting point, TCG. The Indonesia highest population density and minimal CV. That's interesting. What does that tell you? Another thing that's interesting is, has been was in the headlines today was Amish people. They don't have autism. There's no autism in the Amish population. None. How do you explain that? Hmm? How do you explain that? Hey, Brightmore. Yeah, well, JFK only had what? Let's see, two 2 years and 9 months, 2 years and 8 months. 2 years and 11 months. Okay, and do you think he was able to fix everything in that time? I think it's impossible. You can't blame JFK for these programs. Yeah, well, he knew about them, but how much did he know about them? again, I think reading the book JFK versus Dulles, Alan Dulles, is going to clear up that idea. Because I don't think JFK was, I don't think it's fair to blame JFK for what they did in Indonesia. I just don't, in my opinion. But I respect yours. 49, 45. That's not all they put in Bologna. Okay. Yeah. And my dear friend Norman, who I still love the concert that we gave together about 2 years ago from Mystery Island Studio, Norman, and we didn't rehearse at all. We just got together and sang some duets, and it was really, really a wonderful and I would agree with you, blessed event. And Norman Smith has a YouTube channel under his name there. He's got a lot of great musical cuts that he performs himself, records himself, does the graphics in the video, and they really are entertaining as well as a lot of them are politically powerhouses. So pick up on Norm Smith on YouTube for some great music. You know that there's an interesting point. You know, I did a couple shows this past month with Courtney Turner, who is organizing a huge event in Nashville on June 2nd, 3rd. Um, it, it's what is it called? Rebels with a Cause. It's called Rebels with a Cause, and they're bringing together dozens of people from Kathy O'Brien will be there. Owen Schroyer will be there from Information. I mean, from Infowars. I can't think of all of them, but there's a number of names that you will recognize. And she being an an acrobat, an aerial artist, will be performing her thing. A lot of music bands there, and that that's that's what I was going to speak to is the idea of music at these events. I am only able to take loud rock music in small doses. I can't sit through 2 or 3 hours of it. I mean, anymore. I'm sure I did when I was 20, but that's an interesting thing because I would go to that, but I don't think I would be content in that constant, bass, drum, and bass, boom, 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 boom. Uh, I don't know. That's just me. Anyway, I'm sure it'll be a great event, and you guys that want to hear some really strong musicians of that, that hard rock genre, that's what I'm seeing in their promotional materials, and I think it's going to be good for a lot of people. I hope that they get thousands of people to come and wish her well. She's quite an expert on the psychological manipulation of our country, and she's also very passionate about women and who women are and what she sees as an uh, an expropriation of real femininity by this culture. A, a very strong, good thinking person, and I'm looking forward to interviewing her again after her big event has passed. Norman Smith said, "We have a victory garden here at Wendy's World in Florida." That sounds great. Boy, I'm trying to get some vegetables started, and I'm just not real good at it yet. I started some kale and some cucumbers, and some of them are living, and some of them flopped over. I guess that's the way it is. Elliot Hall, hello. I support tearing down statues of La Salle. I don't know why. I don't know much about La Salle. It sounds French, and that's just just showing you that's the little bit I remember from that history class I took in eighth or ninth, 10th grade. LaSalle. I bet you David Cranmer Underdown could tell us a lot about LaSalle, but tell me why. If you have, if you're still with us, I'd like to see your response. Just to say a moment of thanks to the folks watching on Rumble. The chat room is open there, but everybody obviously has understood that our main chat is on YouTube this morning. But I am looking forward to the day when I can say the chat is going to be on Rumble. But I can't do that until we get to 1,000. I just don't see it as a viable method of going forward until we have 1,000 people. So once again, if I'm begging, if you haven't done it yet, become a Rumble member and then sign up at McDuff Lives. There's a button there that's called follow, and that's all you need to do. IRB Fenian. Well, welcome to you. They also fought for the Republic in 1798. You bet they did. You bet they did. Yeah. Um, Ireland would have never been free without the Ulster Scots, the Protestant dissenters, and it really was a case of both ends against the middle. There's no other way to put it because the Catholics and the Presbyterians had very little in common if you look at doctrine. Sadly, I think the Catholic has, just changed into from Jansenism, if you know what that is, into really almost Calvinist religion, which is the essence of Presbyterianism as well, in service of this New World Order thing. It's been corrupted, I'm afraid. Sorry to say that, but Pope Francis, you are leading a corrupt organization, and he knows it. And it's got to be painful for him. Got to be painful to be Joe Biden. If there is still a Joe Biden, who knows? Blue-eyed, black-eyed, green-eyed, who knows? Short ears, long ears, receding hairline or not. I've even seen a picture of somebody, it looks like they're stretching out the rubber around his neck bones. There's like a putting on a mask. Shouts, good interview with Nick last. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not on the most familiar grounds there, so I hope I asked some good questions. I like the idea of Nick having the respect for these pioneers, even though sometimes you have to say, well, hey, they were working, they were using their critical thinking. They got something wrong, but the overall idea is probably right that they were being victimized. And there were people that said things like they want to kill the gays or the blacks by any means necessary. These are American, British, German, you know, people from around the world that have this Nazi mentality. Unbelievable, but that's the world we live in. And it's unbelievable, but you have to believe it. You cannot see your way through what's going on here. You cannot apply critical thinking until you are willing to accept that there are people out there that are as evil minded as Hitler, and they are running major parts of governments around the world right now, including ours. If you don't see that, you're just not looking. IRB Fenian says anyone can grow potatoes, lettuce, and strawberries. Okay, well, we're going to try. I don't know about the strawberries. We've already had strawberry season this year, so I'd have to plant some, hoping to see them next year. And I want my reward now, you know. Oh man, the uh, the strawberries we got um, down in North Carolina when we were down there 3 weeks ago were the sweetest I've had since, maybe since, for 40 or 50 years. They were terrific. And my wife made me a pie, a strawberry pie. And I was just smiling for a week. Road Warrior says music is a reflection of the state of the world. I think we've devolved about 1,000 or more years. I used to, I remember my dad very seldom commented on it, but he's, just noise. It's not music. He's referring to when whatever rock and roll he heard. It wasn't music. It was just noise. And me, I dig it. I thought, wow, Beatles. I love things with the beat. The rhythm, that rock. You know, but it's all part of the psyop. It's all part of taking our mind away from the higher faculties that we have to appreciate complex and amazing and beautiful music that you just can't describe in words. And just take that away from us and turn music into a product that can be played on your transistor radio, and then that becomes your music instead of you going to meet with some friends and having you know a jam session. Music now is you don't have to play anymore. You just take it in through your headphones or the environment. All of this is bad. It's bad for thinking. It's bad for our connection with our higher selves. So that's why I've started working on my next musical event, which will be this fall. I'm going to be um, singing a role in La Boheme, and that will be in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. A regional opera company that was kind enough to cast me as Colina in that opera by Puccini. And I can't wait. But I got a lot of work to do because practicing is the only way to do it over and over and over again. So I'm going to be doing that this summer as well as trying to get some vegetables to grow and make the place look nice. I've been doing some landscape type gardening. And yeah, I get tired and sore at the end of the day, but I think that's really okay because, you know, our bodies are going to wear out at some point, but why waste them? Let's do something with them while we got them. Oh, I think you put it pretty well here, Brightmore. Formulaic staccato melodies have replaced organic melodies of the past. Yeah. You ever listen to like for instance, French popular music? It's not square like American, and it's not tune 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 tune, you know. And Spanish music has a lot of threes in it, dun 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 dun. That kind of 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. And in the French, you might just go off to wherever, but the melodies make beautiful sense. Um, uh, Listen to Parle-moi d'amour, or you know, the poor people of Paris. Uh, those tunes, they're not square, they're not Prussian, but they are genuine French expression that you can't create with a computer program. And that's what the magic of life really is. You know, like engineering. Engineering is not math and measuring tools. It's passed on knowledge from thousands of years ago. And the idea that we can just through our mental faculties replace all of the thoughts and aspirations of humanity over the millennia, that's insane. But we've got insane people leading us now, leading us down, leading us away from the higher aspects of life. And we got to get them out of office. We got to get rid of them. We got to get back to hope, real hope, because it's real. And, what did Bob Marley say? He said, in this bright future, we cannot forget the past. Bright future. Let's make it bright and let's enjoy it. Thanks, you all. Been a great week for me. Appreciate your support on Patreon, and got a great show lined up for next week. Monday morning, 11 o'clock, the return of Anton Chaikin to McDuff Lives. He's been working very hard on the next volume of his History of America, the book that we delved into for many, many weeks. Um, we who we are, America from 1750 to 1850. That is volume one. He's writing volume two, and he's been kind enough to share some of his work with me. We'll discuss it Monday morning at 11. Tuesday will be Harley. Wednesday, the Wednesday night trio with David and Mark. Thursday night, Professor Hamamoto, and Friday we'll be right back here with McDuff's Lives chat. So next week on McDuff Lives, be sure and sign up if you haven't already over at Rumble. And thank you all very, very much.